Wash the Spider Out. Written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page, and read for you by Eleanor Elizabeth. Summary. Peter forgot to charge his phone, leading to him drenched and having a sensory overload. "You know, Penis, I don't see anyone that looks like Tony Stark here," Flash sneered behind Peter's back. "Looks like you're a liar after all." Peter closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. "As if any of us believe that you know Tony Stark," Flash scoffed, purposely shoulder-checking Peter as he passed. He turned on the stairs to sneer up at Peter, a flash of triumph glinting in his eyes. Peter had been ecstatic to tell Ned that he was spending the weekend with Tony Stark at the compound to go over some upgrades for his suit. The moment he had seen Ned at school, he had gushed to him about it. Ned, of course, had been equally excited and gushed about all the cool things that Peter would get to do, and begged Peter to tell him everything on Monday morning. Unfortunately, Flash had overheard Peter was heading to the compound after school with Tony and spent the whole day teasing and sneering comments towards Peter whenever he could. "Just ignore him," Ned kept saying, and Peter tried really hard. Flash's words continued to grate on Peter throughout the day, giving the boy a headache as he did his best to ignore them. Superhearing made that hard, though. He had nothing to prove to Flash, he knew that, but sometimes he wished that he could just rub it in Flash's face. He wished he could do it right now, but he couldn't see the familiar car that Happy drove and kept his head bowed. "You're such a loser, Penis," Flash snorted. "Wait until everyone hears about this tomorrow. You actually know Tony Stark? What a joke." "Go home, Flash," Peter gritted out, starting down the stairs, trying to brush past Flash, but the other boy grabbed his arm. "Maybe your parents or uncle will be waiting for you," Flash grinned nastily. "Oh wait, they can't, can they?" Peter swayed where Flash shoved him one last time, his heart clenching in his chest. He stared at Flash, mind roaring above the noise of the students flooding past them, eager to get home and as far away from the school grounds as possible. Flash must have seen something in Peter's face, realising that he'd gone too far, because he took a step back and said, "Later, loser." And then he was spinning on his heel and retreating with the rest of the crowd. Peter was jostled by a running student, and he felt as if the air had been sucked out of his chest. He wiped his face, realising that tears had been flowing down his cheeks, and he sniffed. Ducking his head once again, Peter hurried down the steps with the rest of the students and slipped away from them as fast as he could. Peter kept his head low as he walked away quickly, eager to put as much distance between him and Flash as he could. It wasn't often that Flash stooped so low, but today he was in fine form, knowing just how to push Peter's buttons. He hated that he could let Flash get under his skin like this, and he sniffed as more tears ran down his cheeks. He pulled out his phone, hoping to call Happy and find out what was going on, and groaned when he saw the battery was dead. "Stupid phone," Peter thought bitterly, sliding the phone back into his pocket. Ever since the patrol that had ended with Peter slamming into a brick wall and his phone taking most of the damage, it hadn't been holding battery charge for long. The screen was also cracked to hell, making it hard to read any text that came through. It would have to do, though, because Peter couldn't afford another one. Peter ducked into the nearest alley, hiding himself behind a dumpster as he took a moment to think. He couldn't go home. He already had his bags with him since May had already left for her conference the weekend while Peter was at school. While Peter was capable of taking care of himself while May was gone, he was 15. She felt more comfortable if he had supervision. A quick call to Tony Stark at the weekend at the compound had been put into place. He had his suit with him. Maybe he could just swing to the compound? But the suit was broken, which was one of the things that Peter and Mr. Stark would be working on over the weekend. Ever since the Vulture incident, Peter had been trying to prove to Mr. Stark that he would one day be worthy of being an Avenger. He was trying to be more responsible, and swinging around in a broken suit when Mr. Stark told him not to would be a very bad idea. With a sigh, Peter started walking from the alleyway towards the subway. By the time he got on a train, the headache he had been nursing all day was now a steady throbbing, and there was a sharp pain in the corner of his right eye. Being on the train didn't help, and by the time Peter got off at the last stop, he was nauseous and at the beginning of sensory overload. He shivered as he stepped out of the train station and started walking towards the compound. He hadn't noticed, as he tried to focus on breathing rather than the rising bile in his throat, that the sky had darkened. Black, ominous clouds threatened to drench Peter in seconds as he whimpered. He didn't have any money to afford a taxi to the compound, and he knew he would have to walk the rest of the way. Shoving his hands under his armpits, Peter ducked his head and started walking. Like Peter had predicted, the skies opened not long after Peter started walking, and he let out a whimper when he was drenched in seconds. He shivered violently, teeth chattering as he tried to hold on to any warmth. Ever since the spider bite, Peter had trouble keeping warm. Each drop of rain felt like a sharp needle piercing over his sensitive skin, and Peter cried. Peter lost track of how long he walked, his body getting sluggish with each step. He was so tired that he almost didn't see the car pulling up beside him. When he did, he flinched backwards, stumbling and tripping over his own feet and falling to the ground with a wet splat. He moaned, body shivering violently as his cheek pressed against the mud. "Peter, kid, oh shit, come on, kid," said a familiar voice, but Peter couldn't figure out who it was because the voice was too loud in his head and he moaned. "Come on, in the car." Strong hands were pulling him up, and Peter was too weak to bat them away. He just wanted everything to stop. He was pulled to his feet and shoved inside, the rain no longer beating down on his face and skin. The sound of a door shutting was like a gunshot, and Peter cried out, pressing his hands over his ears. "Peter!" Peter cried out, curling up as tightly as he could, but everything was too much. "Yeah, Tony, I found him. No, he's soaked and he's in pain." "I don't know. I'm coming now. Meet us out front." The words were too rapid for Peter, and it was all too much. His eyes rolled back inside his head, and he passed out. When Peter woke up, he was comfortably warm and weighted down in something soft and heavy. He basked in the warmth, his body relaxed. His body was rising and falling steadily, and while he wasn't sure why, it was oddly comforting. There was a familiar whirring noise that Peter picked up, and a steady heartbeat. Something soft but firm pressed against his forehead and cheek, but Peter was too tired to flinch away from it. "He feels a lot warmer," a soft female voice spoke. It was familiar, and Peter racked his brain for the answer. May? No, she was away. Maybe Pepper? Good. Peter felt the vibrations of the next voice, and he instantly recognised it as Tony. "We can rule out frostbite then." "He'll need to eat something soon," Pepper said, her soft hands pushing back his curls. "The soup is ready. You think you can wake him up this time?" "Yeah, maybe the kid can tell me where the release button is on this thing." He huffed, and Peter felt the vibrations of his laughter and put a strong hand up and down the length of his back. "Don't have a button," Peter slurred and wiggled closer into the warmth. "Kid, you burrow any closer and you're gonna fuse to my side." Tony's voice was light and teasing, making Peter hum. "Swarm." "Peter, honey, are you awake?" Pepper asked, fingers brushing through his curls. Peter forced his eyes to open. He blinked at the sudden brightness and waited for the haze of sleep to fade away. It took a moment to make sense of what he was looking at, and he felt his cheeks flush hot. He was tucked into Tony's side, cheek resting right next to his arc reactor, and his arm wrapped around the man's waist, his sticky powers making sure he couldn't escape. He was wrapped in multiple blankets, and it looked like they were in the living room. "Hi." Pepper's face came into view, her smile soft and patient. "How are you feeling?" Peter frowned and thought about it. He remembered his head pulsing with pain, but that was gone now, just leaving him tired. His nose felt a little stuffy, and he hoped he wasn't dripping onto Tony's shirt. "Okay," Peter answered. "Do you remember what happened?" Tony asked, a palm running up and down his spine again. Peter furrowed his eyes. "I had a headache. Oh man, sensory overload sucks." Tony chuckled again. "You're telling me. You scared the crap out of Happy, you know. And me." Peter pushed himself up, the blankets slightly falling away as he stared at Tony. "What?" "Happy went to go pick you up from school, but he changed the pickup point. He sent you a message, but you didn't answer him," Tony said, shifting so he could draw the blankets back up over Peter's shoulders. "He went to check on you, but you weren't there, so we figured maybe you started taking the train. By the time he caught up with you, you were drenched, nearly hypothermic, and in so much pain you passed out. He thought you were... Let's just say you aged us all a good 10 years. "Oh," Peter winced. "I'm sorry, my phone died." "Yeah, I saw your phone. And I'm getting you a new one before you leave here," Tony said. "I made you some soup," Pepper said, as Peter spluttered out his protests. "Come on, sweetie." With the help of Tony and Pepper, Peter was led to the table, still wrapped in a mountain of blankets. When he tried to shrug them off, Tony gave him a stern look. Stay on until I know you're not going to turn into a popsicle." Pepper placed a bowl of hot soup in front of Peter, who ate it eagerly. He hummed happily at the taste, and when the bowl was empty, she refilled it, and Peter ate that too. "Thanks." Peter grinned at her, and she took the bowl away. "That was amazing." "You're very welcome." Pepper smiled at him. "Glad to see you up and lucid this time." Peter frowned, looking at Tony for an explanation. "You woke up a couple of times and made 0 sense. You also used that opportunity to stick yourself to me." Tony grinned wickedly as Peter's cheeks flamed hot. "Those are some powers you got there, buddy." "Sorry," Peter winced. "No need." Tony waved Peter's apologies away. Just glad we can get you warmed up under ruse. Do you know what caused you to go into sensory overload? Peter drew the blankets up around his shoulder tighter, looking anywhere but at Tony or Pepper. The soup had cleared Peter's mind, and the day had come flooding back to him, along with the reason as to why he went into sensory overload in the first place. "Pete?" Tony encouraged, and Peter heard Pepper's heels click as she moved to give them some privacy. "Nothing. It was just a long day," Peter mumbled. He knew that Tony didn't believe him, but his mentor just let him lie. "Okay, if you say so. You know you can talk to me, right? About anything. Not just Spider-Man stuff, but Peter stuff too." Peter looked up and felt tears burning in his eyes as he looked at Tony's wide and open, sincere expression. It wasn't one that many people got to see, and it made Peter's heart swell. The expression turned into one of panic when a tear slipped down Peter's cheek. "Sorry." Peter hastily wiped it away. Tony stood from his chair and came over to Peter, helping him to his feet, and directed Peter back towards the couch and settled him down before sitting next to him and drawing Peter close again. "Want to tell me what's going on?" Tony asked. "Flash was just being a dick," Peter sniffed. "All day. It gave me a headache. That's what caused the sensory attack." Tony gently carded his hands through Peter's curls, and Peter let out a small sigh. "Want Iron Man to pay him a visit?" Tony asked. Peter hid his grin in Tony's chest. "No." "You don't have to answer right away, Underoos." Tony gave him a gentle nudge. "You have all weekend to think about it." "You will do no such thing," Pepper huffed, joining Tony and Peter on the couch, curling on Peter's other side. "It'll be me in the rescue suit that I'm not supposed to know Tony has been building." Tony spluttered out a denial that had Peter cackling and Pepper smirking. Peter snuggled between the two, watching the two of them playfully bicker above him. His bad day seemed so far away now. He closed his eyes, sinking into the warmth and safety that the two gave him. So, hey, I know that I don't really talk on the end of these, but I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's listening. I got to wake up this morning to the notification that I had 100 subscribers on here, which was kind of mind-blowing for me, that anyone at all really wants to listen to my weird little hobby where I get to share some of my favourite fics with people. So, you know, in mild celebration of that, I've been recording basically all day, so I'm gonna be uploading a few fics back to back, so hopefully you can just sit back and binge a few. They're my favourite ones, all in the We Forgot Peter series, so they should be up now. I hope you enjoy them, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed and commented and liked. It just has really been brightening my day and encouraging me to make way more of these because it's just so much fun. But thank you all.